Welcome to the Life Coach Lounge. I'm Angela.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Emily.
This isn't a podcast for coaches. It's for you, for real people navigating real life. It's lighthearted, it's deep, and it's grounded in faith, friendship, and purpose.
And once a month, you can join us in our virtual Life Coach Lounge on Zoom.
So pull up a seat. The Life Coach Lounge is open. Hello and welcome back to the lounge. I'm Lisa and I am delighted to be here today with my friends and fellow life coaches, Emily and Angela. Before we start this podcast, we all just want to remind everyone that just because the three of us are life coaches, this is not just a podcast for coaches. Anyone and everyone who enjoys authentic conversation is welcome here in the lounge. And no matter what we're discussing, we are here to encourage you. And if you would like any additional support, we're here for you. We all have our own practices, and you can find all that information in our show notes, and we would love to support you. So, ladies, I came across this reel during one of my mindless scrolls that kind of stopped me in my tracks because the reel itself was on overthinking and how it robs us before anything has actually even happened. And honestly, I felt like it was calling me out. So I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna talk about this because I feel like I am kind of living in a little overthinking in real time situation recently. So let's go there. So my icebreaker question to the two of you is, what's something you have overthought recently, big or small, where you've kind of spiraled out about something that maybe someone said, a conversation, something situational, circumstantial? For me personally, it was definitely a message that I read in like a texting type message. Yeah, my brain was like, okay, let's go. Let's go. I have lots of things to say. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. So that's my most recent overthinking. How about you, Emily? Do you have a big or a small? I feel like we all do. I don't care if you're a coach or you're not a coach. Like, this is just part of being human.
So yeah, I do think that this is part of being human. At least my human experience has definitely had a lot of overthinking, time spent overthinking. The thing that came up for me was anytime there is a gift giving opportunity, whether it's for a birthday or for the holidays or just to bless somebody, maybe it's a get well sort of little package. I tend to overthink that way too much. I appreciate when I get gifts that are useful. I don't like to have a lot of clutter. And so I take that and I spin it into picking out the right thing for that person so that they don't see it as just clutter or extra or something. And so the decision about what to get is part of it. And then I can take it to the next level. And once I decide on what to get, maybe it's a little book or something like that. Well, then I have to go see where I can get the best deal on it. So I'll go to Amazon and then maybe I'll go to another book site or maybe I'll check stores locally. So talk about exhausting. Like I am exhausting myself even thinking about it or telling you both about it. So yeah, overthinking happens for me when it comes to gift giving. Anyone else? Can you relate?
Oh, yeah. And then you buy it, and then you find something you think you like better, and then you second guess. At least I do that.
Yes. And sometimes I will paralyze in the moment and just say, well, it's too late now. It's you probably can't get it there in time. And then I just sometimes even skip it, which is also not the outcome that I want. If I thought to send something to somebody, I wanted to bless them. And so, yeah, I can't even talk myself out of it. So it's a good conversation to have.
How about you, Angela? What is something that's relatively recent, big or small?
So we moved recently, and when we were house shopping, we knew where we wanted to be. We knew the price point. Obviously, we knew, like, we had our must-have list and all of that. But I would scroll the listings every single morning, first thing, and I would find houses that there was something about it that I loved, either the style or the location or whatever. So there was just one piece of the puzzle. But then I would just start to go, could I change this? Could I change this? Could I change this? Do you think I could live there? You know, what if I moved this wall? What if I tore out the driveway and put in this and did this and, you know, remodeled and did, like, I would just go, my brain would just go on fire with it. And then I would have to stop myself and say, no, you know exactly what you want. You know you want to wait for it. You know you don't want to settle, and just literally have to almost step out in front of my runaway thoughts to, you know, put the stop sign up and say, whoa, just stop right there. So it's exhausting. There's a lot of energy, I think, that goes into that kind of indulgence of overthinking.
For sure. So obviously we're talking about overthinking today and how it steals from us twice, why our brains love to cast us as the villain rather than the hero in scenarios that often never happen, and why I say we. I'm speaking of myself, but if this resonates for you, then it is, you know, the royal we. Why we collect tools to help us when we find ourselves in these spiraling anxious thoughts, and then somehow never actually use said tools when we need them the most. So, to start the conversation off a little bit today, I kind of put together some different approaches to overthinking that I was just taking notes on. So, the first one I called the false search, meaning you're overthinking something. And I think I see this a lot with clients, and your ability to overthink kind of robs you from, again, you both use the word exhausting, that exhausting loop of accepting what you already know to be true. But because our brain is wired to be like, oh, well, you're thinking this, and now I'm going to give you every scenario in which that could be true, or maybe it was true in the past. So therefore, we're going to be a fortune teller and it's going to be true again. That's what I meant by a false search. Likely, the client is in a place where it's our job as coaches to guide them to their aha moment that they already know, but they're stuck in that exhausting loop. Do you guys find that to be true when you work with clients? How does that work in your coaching practice, Angela?
I think that this is the foundation of coaching, is separating facts from thoughts. And a lot of times these runaway thoughts are just that. They are not based in fact. And so helping our clients separate that out and saying, what here is a fact? What is true here? And then let's work on why we're creating all this drama in our mind around these facts. I got a text message. These were the words. and this is what I made it mean, or this is how it always goes, or wherever our brain goes with this. That's where the real work is. But separating that out can kind of help with that brain that's looking for evidence to prove our thoughts are true.
Yeah, it's like our brain is asking us a repeated question. We've already answered or have the answer for it, but it's like, well, let me just ask you a different way. Let me approach this from the West instead of the East. How about you, Emily? How do you find that kind of false search happening in your coaching practice?
Well, I think similar to what Angela said, I remember a coach of ours, one of our mentors, when I have witnessed her coaching or been coached by her, she will say, if you have a conversation with your husband and he says something, if they're just words, right, and we make it mean something because it caused us to feel something, she's really good at saying, okay, tell me everything, right? You tell the whole story from your perspective. And then she says, okay, if we really break this down, husband said words. Now what's true? Really picking apart what is factual. Okay. Doesn't even matter what the words are that he says. He said words. And now what have you added to that? What have you made that mean? What story is your brain coming up with to make it kind of a painful experience? So it just gives you a good perspective to break it down into a third party perspective. You know, this person said this thing. Now what?
I love that example too. That's, I think, something that most people can relate to, whether it's your husband or your child or your best friend or a teacher at school, maybe somebody at church, at work. Person said words. I don't know. I think that could be on a t shirt.
Right? Person said words. Now I have a responsibility to, like, for my response to that. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't change that that happened.
Mm-hmm.
My agency is in how I want to interpret that, what I want to say or not say in response, and how I want to feel about it. So just really getting back in our lane, like what's our agency in this?
Yeah. And I think that can also be helpful when we find ourselves arguing with reality where, we're not really coming to terms with what is true, making up all kinds of stories around that. And so, ask yourself, what is true? It's a good question to just settle yourself if your thoughts are racing in, storytelling, fear, false evidence, and getting to the point where you can get from resisting what is to acceptance.
That was a perfect segue, Angela, into my second way of kind of framing overthinking, which I called the double robbery. So you just touched on that when I said earlier that overthinking and how it steals from us twice. What I meant by that was it first is stealing from you in your untrue thoughts, so in your imagination, and then it steals from you again in your reality once you realize I just went through this disaster before it even happened, and turns out it didn't happen. So that's kind of what I meant earlier when I said it's robbing you twice, or we can allow it to rob us, not just once, but twice. So, yeah, that was a really good explanation for that kind of situation.
So my husband is in the tool and die industry, and if he makes a piece of tooling and it gets messed up, he will say, it's not just the cost. We had all that machine time, labor, all the things, but it's also the opportunity cost that we just lost, because now we have to allocate machine time to redoing it when we could have been doing another job. And so I think of opportunity cost with this. if you are using all of that energy spiraling in your thoughts, instead of directing that energy into something creative or productive, you are missing out. You have an opportunity cost that's going, away. It is costing you something.
That's a great perspective, Angela. I've heard it put this way as well. So obviously life is full of ups and downs, right? There are going to be things that don't go the way that you had hoped, unpleasant experiences, but we were only meant to live through it when it happened. And so rehearsing the trouble before it happened as a possible outcome, then you're going through it multiple times. So rehearsing it before it actually happens is a pain that we're causing for ourselves. Whereas if we just, like you said, use that time and energy for something more productive, more creative, taking it to God in prayer. I mean, that's what I've had to do. I think that's where I heard that phrase or read that phrase. Don't rehearse your troubles before they happen. You're only
Yeah.
meant to go through them one time. And so when I find myself rehearsing possible troubles, that's a great reminder for me to take it to the Lord and say, okay, Lord, this might happen. But if it does, I know you'll be with me. And so I don't want to live through it more than one time if it is meant to be.
I love that. Can you repeat that one more time?
There's no need to rehearse your troubles before they happen. You were only meant to experience. If a trouble is supposed to come your way, you're only meant to experience it once.
To all our friends who like to worry.
Yeah.
Right? Why multiply our suffering? And that stopped me in my tracks. I'm like, yeah, why would I multiply my suffering? That's not what God wants for me. And that's no way to live.
And it goes with it pairs nicely with, we only have this day. Like, this is not a dress rehearsal. Therefore, let's not rehearse.
Right. We don't have the script for tomorrow. So how
Right.
can we even rehearse what is going to happen? Right. That's not within our control. Our thoughts in the moment are within our control, but what happens next is not.
For me personally, I have noticed over the course of the last few years, again, as I've said on multiple podcasts now, a lot of this I do attribute to hiring my first coach and learning how to take my thoughts captive and being responsible for my thoughts. Like I think Emily said earlier, like we have agency over that. Now, that's not to say that I'm by any stretch of the imagination perfect at reining in my brain's continued favorite hobby of having a debate team in my head. Well, what about this? Have you talked about this? Oh, let me think about this, which often would occur for me at the wee hours of the morning. Anybody else? I'm sure there are a lot of women out there listening to this, maybe some men too. But if you're a woman in midlife, I'm sure you can raise your hand with me and be like, yeah, that 3 a.m., let's have a conversation that your brain wants to have with you tends to fall into overthinking something. And what I have found to be true is that I never end up being the hero in any of those scenarios. I am always the victim. I am always the one that's like, I don't know what to do. And so with coaching, I have learned that what both of you have reiterated, which is we get to control only one thing, and that one thing is us, our thoughts, our agency. Do either one of you have like certain times of day when your brain has just hijacked you, and then, like I said, like the debate team has shown up in your brain and wants to have a conversation, and you're like, no, I really want to sleep or do something, anything other than this right now? Angela, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's usually right when I go to bed, I'll be so tired. I'll get all snuggled in. I can feel myself drifting off, and then my eyes will just spring open, and all of a sudden my brain is like, nope, let's worry about things. And then the other time it happens is first thing in the morning when I'm trying to read my Bible, journal, do all the things, and my brain just wants to go here, there, and everywhere. I have such a hard time focusing. So, yeah, first thing in the morning and last thing at night for me.
So, I'm not going to coach you on this, but here's what I'm hearing when you say that is that good to know, like good for you to recognize that that is bookending, like you have bookends to your day. That is how your brain wants to put you to bed and how your brain wants to start your day.
Yeah, and I think being tired is a factor because your resistance is down. So until the coffee kicks in, the brain takes over. And at night when I'm tired and trying to fall asleep, same thing.
You ever feel hijacked, Emily?
Yeah, I would say at times of higher stress, it would definitely be early in the morning. Like I'll wake up sort of with that panic feeling and racing thoughts. Not as frequently at night for me, but definitely during times of high stress, I would say it's more of the bookend, similar to Angela. So I have a question for both of you because my friend Julia recently posted about this on social media or her blog or both. I can't remember. She was just pondering the value of having quiet time during the day while you're doing something else. So she happened to be folding laundry and she was saying instead of listening to a podcast or having music on or having any sort of distraction, she was like, I just decided to fold the laundry and let it be quiet. And so her thought, when she really kind of summed up all of her thoughts, she was saying, some of our best ideas come when we're in the shower. Why? Because all we're doing is showering. Like you might have music, but normally you don't have music or a podcast on over the sound of the water. And so, are we giving our brains enough quiet, undistracted time during the day so that it doesn't keep us up at night, wake us up in the morning, or wake us up even in the middle of the night? And I just thought that was a really profound perspective because all of us have technology at our fingertips, right? There is always noise, whether it's our people or the television or our phone or music. And it doesn't even have to be bad noise to still be noise. So, what do you think of that? Do you think there's anything to that, that we're not giving ourselves enough quiet, uninterrupted thought time during the day, and that might be affecting us?
First of all, I think this is a whole podcast episode. And I also think that my quick answer to you is I think I've mentioned him on the podcast before, but I follow someone who wrote a book on reconnecting with ourselves and stopping the noise of everything going on around us, so that we can listen to the noise that is still inside of us. Because just because we stop the noise of the television, the podcast, the music playing in the background, what your friend is describing and what this gentleman, his name is Carlos Whitaker, is sharing with his listeners is the importance of stepping away and being not just mindful, but being soulful. And one of the things that he says that goes along with what your friend wrote about in her blog or her post is that, I mean, the three of us come from a Christian faith, and so does he. But I think it's important to recognize whether you come from a Christian faith or not, whoever you follow, you can't sit and hear them and engage with them in the noise. It doesn't happen in the noise. So for us, God might be whispering to us, but we're not going to hear it in all the noise.
For sure.
But as your friend was describing, if she chooses to fold her laundry in silence and just be in her own, whatever noise is going on for her, because we all have internal noise as well, you're going to hear more. So, yeah, I think it's very important to do that.
Great reminder.
We should link it to this episode.
I will get her permission. Yes, we could do that. It's a great read. It was a really great read, and
Mm-hmm.
I remembered it. It stuck with me. And it just, like Angela said, a great reminder for all of us to just turn the noise off at different times during the day. It's good for us and for our soul.
Mm-hmm. A couple other things I kind of labeled the overthinking in my own terms was, and maybe it's because I'm in menopause age, so I often feel like a hot mess express, literally and figuratively. But anxiety kind of creeps up too in that, whether it's hormonal driven or situationally driven. But then again, those looping thoughts just make that fight or flight like bink, it is front and center. Boom, my prefrontal cortex has completely shut down. There is no room for reasoning, creativity, problem solving. Like none of that is happening. So, do either one of you have some suggestions for listeners who are like, oh, yep, I can relate to that one. I can relate to that one too.
I think this comes up for me when I feel misunderstood. I will just go over it and over it and over it in my mind because I want so badly to be understood that I replay it, and, formulate my own comeback for making sure that I am properly understood and just keep on, rehearsing it and editing it and thinking of new things and going over it again. And it's like I'm causing my own anxiety and hot mess express for sure. When I could just say, this is what I hear you saying. Is that actually what you're saying? And just getting to the heart of it right away.
Yeah, that exhaustion to me, I have been in that scenario more times than I probably want to admit. But I just need you to know where I'm coming from. I need you to understand. I need all the things I need, right? Which again, I don't have control over how they're going to respond to anything that I'm saying. And so it goes back to that exhaustion you were talking about earlier. Except in that scenario, I actually think it's progress. Like I view it as I'm doing something because I have to make them hear me.
It feels like important work.
It does.
I'm doing important work right now. Yes.
Yep. Yep.
That's very relatable. The feeling of being misunderstood causes a lot of anxiety. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I would say another one for me is replaying conversations, especially if it's a larger gathering or lots of conversations in a short period of time. It doesn't do me any good to replay those conversations and beat myself up over judging myself for how I showed up, what I said, what I didn't say, who I talked to, who I didn't talk to. I remember that being something that I would do over and over and over again, even if we just went out to dinner with friends. And now that we're talking about this, I am really happy to say I have grown in this area because I am much more able to manage those thoughts and just remind myself what's done is done. If there's something that you did that was hurtful or unkind, go and apologize for it. But I don't know that there's ever been a situation where that has actually been the case. It was always just me overthinking all of the conversations and being a bully to myself about how I didn't show up the right way or say the right thing. That's exhausting.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I used to be really good at, and not just when it comes to overthinking, but when it comes to any aspect of things in my life, it's no secret between the three of us and our listeners that I'm very analytical. I like to know how things work. I want to know more. I crave knowing more about, like, aromatherapy, for example. Like, I craved that knowledge to learn the science behind certain things. I also recognize that I have a history of being a tool collector of how to help myself with overthinking or other self-help tools. And for the longest time, I would feel like if I just stayed in learning mode, I'm actually making progress, right? I'm actually doing the thing. However, when I'm catastrophizing something or making all the things come to fruition that are not actually true, but they're true in my imagination, I don't use those tools. And so I can relate to what Emily just said, because it turns out, as I was like writing notes down for this podcast, I'm like, oh, actually, I can recover much faster. I mean, we all mentioned that it's human to, if you overthink something because of the circumstance, a problem or something is causing you to feel an emotion. Well, that's just being human. But as coaches and people who have also been coached, we know how to move forward faster. It doesn't mean that we don't ever overthink things. But I wanted to bring that up in case anyone is listening who can relate to, I'm just going to read this one more self-help book. I'm just going to listen to this person give a talk on TED Talk on this. Like, I just stayed in this constant mode of, I'll just keep learning how to stop doing fill in the blank.
Yeah, we can all get stuck in research and development rather than creation, innovation, and especially those of us who love to learn. We can just become the professional student, never have a career.
I think at times too, it can make us hyper fixated on the thing we're wanting to learn about too. And so I think there's a danger in that also, like making anxiety like the thing that I'm learning about and reading about and thinking about. Well, sometimes that just leads to more anxiety, actually. So it's good to check yourself. I'm reading this book, and before I read the next book, I'm going to see if I can implement some of these tools I just learned. So being aware of the implementation, I think, is key towards recovery and improvement.
And I think it's important too to not fall victim to like gaslighting yourself or shaming yourself. If you do something like you just mentioned, you read the book, well, therefore it should work. Like, I read the book. I used to think about that whenever I would take like a yoga class or a meditation. I'm like, well, I did the thing. Why am I not relaxed? I checked the box. Why is it not working? So therefore I'm not going to do it again, or I failed at it. Or so I think it's important to keep that in mind too. This is a work in process, just daily life.
Yeah, this isn't math. There isn't a formula. Like, this is life. This is real life, unscripted. Keep moving forward, one step in front of the other. There is not an A plus B equals C formula to make all of this just disappear.
One of you mentioned earlier to ask yourself, is it true? What I'm saying, what I'm thinking, like hit that pause button and ask yourself, is it true? And that I had written down something that a coach had said. The three of us have been in group coaching calls. And so when your brain is trying to make something a problem, ask yourself, how is it not a problem? And just the act of doing that has been super helpful for me, because asking yourself that question actually makes your brain have to pause. Just asking that question, you're like, wait a minute, what did she just say? How is that not a problem? Because so often we hear people say, well, how is that a problem? So I'm going to repeat myself in case that's what you heard, because that's what people typically say. How is that a problem? But what I find to be very beneficial is to ask yourself, how is that not a problem? It really makes your brain pause to think about the answer to that question.
Yeah, it hits the reverse
Mm-hmm.
instead of going forward with the same thoughts. I like that a lot. And we had talked about, is it true? But the three questions that I love are, is it true? Is it helpful? And is it kind? And if you can ask those questions, a lot of times you can find out not so much.
We see things with that saying on it, right? When we are going to be working with other people, usually is how you treat others, right? Well, turns out we like to be treated the same way. It's just not something front and center for a lot of us. And it does take effort to be true and kind to ourselves. What? There's a novel idea. So, ladies, before we wrap up today, is there anything else that you would share with our listeners? Any other real talk opportunity here, a permission slip to hand out to them?
Yeah, this has been a great conversation. I would say the one thing that is currently helping me when I find myself overthinking, especially as it relates to a decision that I have to make, I have just started telling myself, just decide, whether that's how I'm going to spend my time or if I'm going to decide to do something or go somewhere or what gift to buy, right? Just decide. Almost giving myself a little bit of a mom reprimand. Like, just decide. Stop the crazy train thinking and just make a decision. Or don't. Either way, get off the crazy train and just decide. So that's been really helpful for me. I think anytime you can interrupt your thought process with something like just decide, or is it true? Or how is that not a problem? Getting your brain to think about it in a different way interrupts that thought pattern, that spiral, so that you can maybe regain a little bit of footing and get off the crazy train and actually be productive with whatever it is you're doing.
I was going to say, we all encounter situations that we don't have control over, whatever it is, maybe adult kids, maybe, a financial situation or whatever it is. We all encounter big and small things that are out of our control. And a lot of times the way we look for control is by overthinking and trying to figure things out, and recognize when something is out of your control, you have no control over it, and give it to God. I think that's the perfect time to kind of put the wrench in the wheel and say, I don't have control over this. And what I do have control over is praying about it and casting my care, giving it to God and letting God work with it. I think we all have situations like that.
And I think in order to do that justice, in my own humble opinion, you need to do what Emily brought up, to be silent, be quiet, and allow that opportunity to happen. And even if our listeners aren't taking it to God, you still need to hit that pause button enough to know what the next answer is going to be. Because otherwise, we're just going to end up right back on that loop. This has been a really insightful conversation, because I think it's just it is a part of just being human.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Angela and Emily, as always, it's so great to have conversations with you. We hope that this episode has been a blessing for everyone else as well. And we would love for you to consider joining us in our virtual lounge that we will be hosting once a month. So come and see us. We'd love to know what you're overthinking about. Chances are, so are we. All right, until next time, we will see you again next Tuesday. All right, ladies, and as always, I will see you two in the Marcos.